The Galactic Conclave had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. They kept peace between 1,000 different alien species. They made laws. They controlled trade routes. They decided who could travel between worlds and who could not. But their power was built on one simple truth: the strong survived and the weak died. This truth had a name. They called it the Predator Test. Every species that wanted to join the Conclave had to pass this test. The rules were simple. One member of the species would be dropped on a hunting world. 6 hunters from the race would chase them. If the prey survived for 7 days, their species could join the Conclave. If they died, their species was marked as weak and left alone in the dark corners of the galaxy. No species had ever passed. They were born to kill. They stood 3 meters tall, covered in black scales that could stop bullets. Their eyes could see heat, so they could track any living thing through walls, through darkness, through smoke. Their claws could cut through metal. Their teeth could crush bone. They had hunted every intelligent species in the galaxy, and they had never lost. The Conclave said the test was necessary. They said it proved which species deserved to stand among the stars. But everyone knew the truth. The test was entertainment. They enjoyed the hunt, and the Conclave enjoyed watching. When the human colony ship Dawn Horizon entered Conclave space, the aliens saw another opportunity, another hunt, another show. The ship carried 3,000 humans. They were colonists looking for a new home. They had traveled for 50 years in frozen sleep, dreaming of green worlds and blue skies. Instead, they woke up surrounded by Conclave warships. The Conclave gave them 2 choices: send 1 human to take the Predator test, or watch their ship be destroyed. The captain of the Dawn Horizon was a tired old man named. He had led his people across the emptiness between stars. He had kept them safe through equipment failures and cosmic storms. Now he stood in his command center, looking at the alien ships on his screen, and he felt very small. "We need a volunteer," he said to his officers. His voice was heavy with shame. "Someone has to go." The officers looked at each other. They all knew what the test meant. Whoever went would die. They had killed hundreds of intelligent beings over thousands of years. No one had ever survived. Then a voice spoke from the back of the room. "I will go." Everyone turned. A woman stepped forward. She was average height with short black hair and a face that showed no emotion. Her name was Park, and she was 34 years old. She was not a soldier. She was a scientist who studied alien life. Captain frowned. "Dr. Park, you are a researcher. This test requires a fighter." "The test requires a survivor," corrected him. Her voice was calm and flat like still water. "I have survived." She was right. 3 years ago had been stationed on a research base on a hostile planet. A pack of local predators had attacked. They killed everyone except her. She had lived alone on that planet for 3 years, hunting, hiding, and waiting for rescue. When the rescue team finally arrived, they found her sitting calmly in a shelter made from the bones of the creatures that had killed her team. The rescue team leader had written in his report, "Dr. Park showed no signs of psychological trauma. When asked how she survived, she simply said, 'I learned to hunt better than them.'" Captain studied her face. He saw the scars on her hands and neck. He saw the strange stillness in her eyes. Most people who survived terrible things carried fear with them forever. Park carried something else, something that made him uncomfortable. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Yes." The captain nodded slowly. He did not want to send anyone to die. But if someone had to go, maybe it should be the woman who had already walked through hell and come back. The Conclave transport came for the next day. She brought nothing with her. No photographs. No personal items. No letters to loved ones. She walked into the alien ship like she was walking into an office for a normal day of work. The transport took her to the Conclave station, a massive structure that floated in empty space. Thousands of alien species lived there, traded there, and watched the Predator test broadcasts there. When arrived, she saw creatures of every shape and size. Some had tentacles, some had wings, some were made of crystal or metal or living light. All of them looked at her with the same expression, pity. They think I am already dead, thought. Good, let them think that. An arbiter met her in a cold, gray room. The arbiter was a floating sphere covered in eyes, and it spoke through a small drone that hovered near her ear. You are the human representative, the arbiter said. You will be released on Prime tomorrow at dawn. You will have no weapons. You will have no tools. You will have no communication devices. The hunt will last 7 solar cycles. If you survive, humanity earns provisional membership in the conclave. If you die, your species will be classified as non-viable and access to conclave space. Listened without expression. Do you understand? The arbiter asked. Yes. Do you have any questions? Thought for a moment. Tell me about Prime. The arbiter seemed surprised. Most prey asked about the hunters. They wanted to know how fast they could run, how far they could see, how to escape them. No one ever asked about the planet. Prime is a Class 7 death world, the arbiter explained. Volcanic activity covers 60% of the surface. The atmosphere contains toxic spores that will damage your lungs within hours without protection. Acid rivers flow through the canyon systems. The native wildlife is extremely dangerous. Average survival time for an unprotected humanoid is approximately 4 hours. What about plants? Asked. Fungi, insects. The arbiter paused. Why do you want to know about plants? Because plants don't run, said simply, and neither do I. The arbiter did not understand her answer. It recorded the conversation and moved on to the standard preparations. Was given a medical scan, a psychological evaluation, and a final meal. She ate slowly, chewing each bite carefully like she was memorizing the taste. That night she sat alone in her cell and thought about the hunt. She did not think about escape routes or hiding places. She thought about their eyes, their claws, their scales. She thought about how they moved, how they communicated, how they thought. They have hunted for 10,000 years, she thought. They have never lost. They expect me to run. They expect me to hide. They expect me to die tired and afraid like every other prey they have ever chased. A small smile crossed her face. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something that others did not. They have never hunted a human before, she thought. They do not know what we are. They do not know what we can do. In the cold darkness of her cell, Park closed her eyes and slept peacefully. Tomorrow, she would be dropped on an alien world full of poison and fire. Tomorrow, 6 apex predators would hunt her for sport. Tomorrow, the galaxy would watch her die. But was not afraid. She had been prey before. She had felt claws tear her flesh and teeth snap near her throat. She had learned something in those years alone on that hostile world, something they and the Conclave did not understand. Humans were not born as predators. They did not have claws or fangs or armor. They were soft, slow, and weak. But they had something else. They had minds that could adapt. They had patience that could outlast any other creature. They had a darkness inside them that only came out when they were pushed to the edge. The thought they were hunting prey, they were wrong. They were waking up a predator that had been sleeping inside Park for 3 years. And tomorrow, that predator would open its eyes. Prime was a world made of fire and poison. Volcanoes covered the land like wounds on burned skin. Rivers of acid cut through black rock. The sky was orange and red, filled with ash that never stopped falling. The air smelled of sulfur and death. This was where they had been born. This was where they had become the greatest hunters in the galaxy. Every rock, every shadow, every cave was known to them. They had evolved here over millions of years, learning to survive where no other creature could. The Conclave transport dropped at dawn in a canyon system near the planet's equator. She wore simple clothes made of synthetic fiber. She had no weapons, no tools, no food, no water. The transport door opened, and hot wind hit her face like a slap. She stepped out onto the black volcanic rock. The transport rose into the sky and disappeared. She was alone. High above, in orbit around the planet, millions of aliens watched through cameras hidden in the rocks. This was the most popular entertainment in the conclave. They had seen hundreds of hunts over thousands of years. They knew how this story would end. The prey would run. The prey would hide. The prey would eventually tire, make a mistake, and die screaming. But something strange happened. Did not run. She stood still for a long moment, looking at the landscape around her. Then she knelt down and picked up a handful of ash. She rubbed it between her fingers, smelled it, even tasted a small amount. She spat it out and nodded to herself. Then she started walking, not running, walking, slowly, carefully, like someone taking a peaceful stroll through a garden. The viewers were confused. The commentators did not know what to say. This was not how prey behaved. 5 kilometers away, the hunt master watched the human through a thermal scanner. He was the leader of this hunt, the most successful killer in history. He had personally killed 17 intelligent beings during previous tests. He had never felt any doubt about his ability to catch prey. But watching this human walk calmly through the canyon made him feel something he did not recognize. "She is not running," said one of his hunters, a young male named. "Is something wrong with her?" "Perhaps she is in shock," suggested another hunter, a female named. "Some prey freeze when they realize there is no escape." Watched the human stop near a cluster of rocks. She began examining the ground, picking up stones and plants, looking at insects. She moved like a scientist doing research, not like a creature fighting for survival. "She is studying," said slowly. "She is learning about our world." Why asked, "What good will that do her?" Did not answer, he did not know. "We will give her until nightfall," he announced. "Let her walk, let her tire herself, then we hunt." His pack agreed. They settled into their positions and waited. Spent the entire day walking through the canyon system. She moved slowly, stopping often to examine things. She found a type of fungus growing on the shadowed side of rocks. When she touched it, it released a cloud of tiny spores. She watched the spores drift through the air and noticed how the small lizard-like creatures in the area avoided them. She collected some of the fungus in a pouch she made from her torn sleeve. She found a beetle with a bright blue shell. When she picked it up, a sticky liquid leaked from its body and made her fingers feel numb. She collected several beetles. She found a plant with red thorns. When she accidentally touched one of the thorns, her skin immediately began to turn black around the wound. The pain was extreme. She cut away the infected skin with a sharp rock, losing a small piece of her palm. Then she carefully collected several thorns, wrapping them in leaves. By midday, she had found a source of water, a small pool fed by underground springs. The water was warm and tasted of minerals, but it was not poisonous. She drank deeply and refilled her sleeve pouch. By afternoon, she had mapped the canyon system in her mind. She knew where the narrow passages were, where the ground was unstable, where the shadows fell at different times of day. She knew where she could run and where she would be trapped. By evening, she had chosen her first hunting ground. When the sun began to set, found a small cave and built a fire using volcanic rocks that still held heat from the planet's core. She did not try to hide the fire. She did not try to hide herself. She sat in the mouth of the cave and waited. Pack descended at nightfall. They moved through the darkness like shadows, their thermal vision painting the world in shades of heat. They could see the human's fire from 2 kilometers away. They could see her body heat glowing like a beacon. "She has made a fire," said with disbelief. "She is announcing her position to us." "She has lost her mind," said eagerly. "This will be easy." Said nothing. Something felt wrong. In all his years of hunting, no prey had ever made themselves so visible. Prey hid. Prey ran. Prey did not sit by fires and wait for death. "Move carefully," he he ordered. "Spread out and approach from multiple directions." His 6 hunters obeyed. They circled the cave, closing in from all sides. Himself approached from the front, walking directly toward the fire. The cave was empty. Stopped, he looked at the fire. It was still burning. He could see the human's heat signature inside the cave, but now that he was closer, something was wrong. The shape was wrong. The heat pattern was wrong. "It is a decoy," he realized. She heated rocks and arranged them to look like. The scream came from behind him. Had stepped into a pit. The ground had looked solid, covered with a thin layer of volcanic glass, but beneath it was a hole 3 meters deep. At the bottom were stakes made from sharpened bones, bones from the small animals that lived in the canyon. The stakes were covered with paste made from the red thorn plants. Lay at the bottom of the pit, 3 stakes through his body. His screams were terrible, but they did not last long. The necrotic poison from the thorns worked fast. His flesh began to rot from the inside out. Within minutes, he stopped moving. Stared at the pit. His mind could not process what he was seeing. "She dug a trap," whispered. "She dug a trap and covered it. She used poison from our own world. How did she know?" "She spent the day learning," said. His voice was quiet. "She was not wandering, she was gathering intelligence, gathering weapons." The other hunters looked at each other. For the first time in their lives, they felt uncertain. "One human's," brother growled. "She killed one of us with a trick. We are still 5. We will find her and tear her apart." Did not respond immediately. He was looking at the landscape differently now. He was seeing all the places where traps could hide, all the shadows where a clever prey could wait. No, he corrected himself. Not prey, something else. "We hunt together," he ordered. "No one separates from the group. Watch every step. She has shown us what she can do." He looked up at the dark sky, where cameras recorded everything for the conclave viewers. "The human is more dangerous than we expected," he admitted. "But she is still alone. She is still soft. She will make a mistake, and when she does, we will be there." Somewhere in the darkness of the canyon, hidden in a crack between rocks that was too small for bodies, Park listened to them talking. Their language was strange, but their tone was clear. They were confused. They were careful. They were beginning to be afraid. Good, she thought. Fear makes hunters careless. Fear makes them make mistakes. She settled deeper into her hiding spot and closed her eyes. She needed to rest. Tomorrow she would kill again. The first day was over. 1 hunter was dead. 5 remained. The hunt had truly begun. By the 3rd day, the galaxy was watching. The Predator test had always been popular entertainment, but this hunt was different. This hunt had broken every expectation. The viewing numbers were higher than any hunt in recorded history. Species that had lost members to the years ago watched with hungry eyes. They wanted to see the impossible happen. They wanted to see the hunters become the hunted. Gave them what they wanted. The second hunter died on the morning of day 2. His name was Minyu, and he was young and fast and eager to prove himself. He had tracked heat signature to a narrow cave entrance. The signature showed her body temperature clearly, suggesting she was sleeping just inside the opening. Minyu was cautious. He remembered death. He checked the ground for pits. He checked the walls for traps. He found nothing. The cave entrance was clean. The prey was right there, exhausted and vulnerable. He stepped inside. The fungus spores hit him immediately. Had spent hours collecting them and packing them into thin pouches made from dried leaves. She had hung these pouches from threads across the cave entrance, positioned so that anyone walking through would break them. Minyu breathed in the spores before he understood what was happening. The paralytic effect was immediate. His muscles locked. His legs stopped working. He fell forward, unable to move anything except his eyes. Stepped out from a crack in the cave wall where she had been hiding. She looked down at the frozen hunter. His eyes moved wildly, filled with terror and rage. Your planet made these spores, she said calmly. Your species evolved to avoid them, but you forgot to check the air. She grabbed his arm and pulled. Minyu was heavy, but the cave floor was smooth, and she was patient. It took her almost an hour to drag him to the cliff edge at the back of the cave. She sat beside him and waited for the paralysis to fade slightly. I want you to feel this, she explained. I want you to understand. When she pushed him over the edge, Minyu was able to scream. The sound echoed through the canyon as he fell 300 meters to the rocks below. The third hunter died that same evening. Her name was, and she was the fastest of the pack. She had found limping through a rocky field, clearly exhausted, clearly injured. The human was favoring her left leg and moving slowly. Saw easy prey, she moved in for the kill. She did not see the trap, had been limping on purpose, pretending to be weak. When lunged at her, pivoted with perfect balance. Her movement was smooth and practiced, the movement of someone who had trained their body to fight. In her hand was a shard of obsidian glass, sharp as any blade. She had found it 2 days ago and had been carrying it, waiting for this moment. The glass went into the soft spot beneath's jaw, directly into her brain. The hunter was dead before she hit the ground. Pulled out the glass and wiped it clean. Then she began the slow work of harvesting. Scales were strong, but the joints between them were soft. She cut away strips of skin and sinew. She removed the long bones from his arms. She took everything useful and left the rest for the canyon scavengers. 3 hunters dead in 2 days. The conclave had never seen anything like it. In the viewing halls across the galaxy, the reactions were mixed. Some species cheered. They had waited thousands of years to see the humiliated. Others were disturbed. They watched the human work with cold efficiency, turning a living creature into tools and weapons, and they felt something close to horror. She is not just surviving, one conclave analyst said during a broadcast. She is establishing dominance. She is sending a message. Another analyst disagreed. She is alone against 3 remaining hunters. They still have the advantage. They will adapt. They will. Will they? The first analyst interrupted. She has killed half their pack in 2 days. She is using their own environment against them. Every time they think they understand her, she does something unexpected. She is not behaving like prey. She is behaving like. He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Back on Prime, gathered his 3 remaining hunters. There was the female who had served with him for 20 years. There was his brother, who burned with hatred and grief. And there was Bora, a quiet male who rarely spoke but always watched. They stood in a circle in a sheltered canyon far from where had last been seen. For the first time in any of their lives, they held a strategy meeting during a hunt. They had never needed strategy before. Prey was prey. You chased it until it died. But this was not prey. She is using our world as a weapon, said. The spores, the plants, the terrain. She spent her first day learning, and now she is turning that knowledge against us. Then we stop letting her use the terrain, growled. We force her into open ground. We corner her where there is nothing she can use. How? Asked. She knows the canyons now. She moves through spaces too small for us. She sets traps and waits for us to walk into them. If we chase her, we are following her plan. Hissed with frustration. So what do? Wait for her to kill us one by one. Was silent for a long moment. He was thinking about something that bothered him deeply, something he had not shared with the others. I watched her kill, he finally said. I was close enough to see, was our fastest hunter. She attacked from behind at full speed. The human should have been dead before she knew what was happening. But she was not, said. She was not, agreed. She moved at the last moment perfectly, like she knew the attack was coming, like she had planned for it. He paused. She was never limping, she was never tired. It was all a performance to make confident. The hunters absorbed this information. She thinks like us, Bora said quietly. It was the first time he had spoken during the meeting. She predicts what we will do and she plans around it. She is not reacting to us. She is guiding us. Every move we make she has already considered. Then she is smarter than us, said bitterly. Not smarter, corrected. Different. We have hunted the same way for 10,000 years. We rely on strength and speed and senses. She has none of those advantages, so she uses different tools: patience, observation, deception. How do we fight that? Asked. Did not have an answer. For the first time in his long career, he was facing a prey that he did not know how to catch. Every tactic he could think of, she had probably already predicted. Every trap they could set, she had probably already considered. We stay together, he decided. Always together. We move slowly and carefully. We check everything before we step. We do not chase her when she runs. We do not attack when she seems weak. We let her control the hunt, demanded. We let her decide when and where we fight. For now, yes, said. She wants us to be aggressive. She wants us to make mistakes. We will not give her what she wants. But even as he spoke, knew the truth. They were not hunting anymore. They were defending. They were hopping to survive long enough for the human to make a mistake. The predators had become prey. And somewhere in the darkness of prime, a woman with blood under her fingernails was preparing her next trap. She had heard their conversation. She had hidden close enough to listen, pressed into a crack in the rock that they had not thought to check. They were learning, they were adapting, they were becoming more careful. But it did not matter, had already studied them. She knew how they moved, how they communicated, how they thought. She knew their weaknesses and their fears. Most importantly, she knew something they did not. Humans were not just predators. They were the most patient predators in the galaxy. They could chase wounded prey for days, for weeks, until the prey simply collapsed from exhaustion. The thought they could wait her out. They were wrong. She had waited 3 years on a hostile planet. She could wait 3 more days on this one. The hunt was not over. It was just entering its final phase. On the 5th day, stopped hiding. She had spent 2 days tracking the remaining hunters. She knew their patrol patterns, their rest schedules, their communication signals. She knew that made decisions, that questioned those decisions, that was angry and reckless, and that Bora watched everything with careful eyes. She knew they were staying together, moving as a pack, trying to deny her the chance to pick them off one by one. It was a smart strategy. It was exactly what she had expected them to do. Now she needed to break them apart. On the morning of day 5, she walked out into open ground. She let them see her. She stood on a ridge overlooking the volcanic plains, her silhouette clear against the orange sky. She was carrying something in her hands. A bow. She had made it from bone, bent and shaped over 2 days of careful work. The string was sinew from its body. The arrows were thin bones, sharpened to deadly points, their tips coated with necrotic poison from the red thorn plants. She stood there and waited for them to come. Saw her first. His thermal vision spotted her heat signature from almost a kilometer away. He stopped his pack and studied her through the distance. "It is a trap," said immediately. "She wants us to approach. There will be pits or spores or something else." "Obviously," agreed. "But look at her. She has made weapons. She is no longer just defending. She is preparing to attack." "She cannot attack all 4 of us," said. "That bow is primitive. She might kill one of us before we reach her, but not all of us." "Unless that is what she wants," Bora said quietly. "Unless she wants us to think we can overwhelm her." Considered this. The human had been unpredictable from the beginning. Every time they thought they understood her, she surprised them. Every assumption they made turned out to be wrong. But they could not hide forever. The hunt had a time limit. If they did not kill her within 7 days, she would survive. Humanity would be allowed to join the conclave. They would be humiliated before the entire galaxy. "We approach carefully," decided. "Spread formation. Watch for traps. Do not rush. If she runs, we do not chase. If she attacks, we defend and close the distance slowly. They began moving toward the ridge. The ground was open, flat volcanic rock with no obvious places for traps. They walked slowly, checking every step, watching the human standing motionless above them. Watched them come. She counted their steps. She calculated distances. She waited until they were exactly where she wanted them. Then she raised her bow and released the first arrow. It flew straight and true, crossing the distance faster than they expected. Saw it coming and tried to dodge, but he was too slow. The arrow hit his shoulder, sliding between the scales into the soft flesh beneath. He roared with pain and pulled the arrow out. "It is nothing," he snarled. "A minor wound, I will." He stopped. He looked at his hand. The flesh around the wound was already turning black. "Poison," said with horror. "The same poison she used on." His eyes went wide. He remembered his brother dying in that pit, flesh rotting from his bones. He remembered the screams. Now the same thing was happening to him. "Cut it off," ordered. "Cut off his arm before the poison spreads." Moved to help but pushed her away. "No," he growled. "No, I will not die slowly. I will take her with me." Before anyone could stop him, he charged toward the ridge. He ran with all the speed his body could produce, covering the distance in seconds. The poison was spreading, eating his flesh, but rage drove him forward. Did not move. She stood perfectly still, watching him come. At the last moment, she stepped aside. Realized his mistake too late. The ridge was not solid rock. She had spent a day hollowing out the ground beneath it, creating a thin shell that looked stable but would collapse under significant weight. A human weight was not enough to break it. A charging was. The ground gave way, fell into darkness. Below him was a pool of the acid that flowed through the planet's underground rivers, had found this place during her exploration and had built her trap around it. The acid dissolved before he could scream, and his remaining hunters stopped. They stared at the hole in the ground, at the steam rising from the acid below. 4 hunters dead, only 3 remained. "She planned this," said. Her voice was shaking. "She knew we would see her. She knew we would approach. She knew would charge if she wounded him. She predicted everything." Did not respond. He was looking at the human standing on the ridge above them. She had not moved. She had not celebrated her kill. She simply stood there, another arrow ready, watching them with eyes that showed no emotion. "We retreat," he said, "now." They fell back across the volcanic plain, did not follow. She watched them go, then turned and disappeared into the landscape. For 2 days avoided her. He led his hunters through the most dangerous parts of Prime, places where the volcanic activity was intense and the terrain was deadly. He hoped the environment would slow her down, would hurt her, would give them some advantage. It did not work. She was always there, somewhere in the shadows, watching them. They could feel her presence even when they could not see her. They could not sleep. They could not rest. Every sound made them jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. On the 6th day, Bora collapsed from exhaustion. He had not slept in 3 days. His mind was breaking under the constant fear. "Leave me," he told. "I am slowing you down. She will kill me soon anyway. Save yourself and—" Looked at his hunter. Bora had served with him for 15 years. He had been reliable, careful, skilled. Now he was a broken creature, trembling on the volcanic rock, waiting to die. "We do not leave our own," said. "Then we all die together," Bora replied. "She will not stop. She will never stop. She is not like the others we have hunted. She has no fear. She has no mercy. She is. She is what we always pretended to be." Knelt beside him. "What do you mean?" Bora laughed. It was a terrible sound, hollow and hopeless. "We called ourselves predators. We said we were the greatest hunters in the galaxy, but we were not really hunting. We were playing. We were killing helpless creatures for sport and calling it a test." He looked up at the orange sky. "She is the real thing. She is a true predator, and true predators do not stop until all their prey is dead." Wanted to argue, but he could not. He knew Bora was right. They had spent 10,000 years hunting creatures that could not fight back. They had forgotten what it meant to face a real threat. They had become soft without knowing it. Now they were learning what the prey had always known, what it felt like to be hunted, what it felt like to know that death was coming and there was nothing you could do to stop it. We find a defensive position, decided. The geothermal springs. The water will hide our heat signatures. The steam will confuse her vision. We make our stand there. It was not a good plan, but it was the only plan they had. They carried Bora to the springs and settled into the warm water. The steam rose around them, hiding them from thermal detection. For the first time in days, they allowed themselves to rest. They did not know that had been watching them from the moment Bora collapsed. They did not know that she had followed them to the springs. They did not know that she had spent 6 hours crawling through the rocks above them, positioning herself for the perfect shot. When the first arrow took through the eye, she never saw it coming. Screamed and tried to climb toward the rocks where the shot had come from. A second arrow hit his hand, pinning it to a stone. He hung there, trapped, watching the human descend from the rocks. She moved slowly, carefully, like a predator approaching wounded prey. Bora had not moved from the water. He simply sat there, watching her come, his face peaceful. "You are not afraid," she observed. "I was afraid for 6 days," Bora replied. "I have nothing left. Do what you came to do." She killed him quickly, a single strike to the heart. It was more mercy than she had shown the others. Then she turned too. The hunt master hung from the arrow through his hand, blood dripping into the water below. He had never felt so helpless. He had never felt so small. "Why?" he asked. "We are just following our traditions. We have always done this. It is what we are." Crouched beside him, for the first time he saw something in her eyes besides cold calculation. He saw anger. He saw judgment. "For 10,000 years," she said, "you have slaughtered helpless creatures and called it a test. You have murdered scientists and diplomats and children, and you have watched them die for entertainment. You told yourselves it was necessary. You told yourselves you were the apex predators, and that made it right." She pulled a knife from her belt, a blade made from bone. "I am not killing you because I have to," she said. "I am killing you because you needed to learn what it feels like to be prey. I am killing you so that every species watching knows the truth." "What truth?" whispered. Leaned close. "That there is always a bigger predator, and humanity has just announced itself to the galaxy." The knife found his heart. The greatest hunter of his generation died in the warm waters of his home world, killed by a creature he had dismissed as soft and weak. The hunt was over. Had won. Walked into the conclave chamber on the 8th day. She had taken her time returning from Prime. The hunt had officially ended on day 7, but she had waited an extra day before signaling for pickup. She wanted the conclave to wait. She wanted them to wonder. She wanted them to feel, even for one day, the uncertainty that their victims had felt for 10,000 years. The chamber was massive, a dome of polished metal and crystal that could hold representatives from 1,000 species. Holographic screens filled the air, broadcasting to every corner of the galaxy. Trillions of beings were watching. This was the largest audience in conclave history. Entered through the main door. She was still wearing the same torn clothes from the hunt. Her skin was covered in cuts and burns and volcanic ash. Her hands were stained with blood. Behind her, she dragged a sled made from scales and bones. On it were 6 heads, preserved in volcanic sulfur, the heads of every hunter who had tried to kill her. The chamber fell silent. Walked slowly down the central aisle. Species that had existed for millions of years stepped back to let her pass. Creatures made of crystal, of light, of living metal, all of them watched her with something close to fear. She stopped in front of the chief arbiter, the floating sphere that had explained the rules of the hunt to her 8 days ago. She dropped the sled handle. The heads tumbled across the polished floor, rolling in different directions. His head stopped at the base of the Arbiter's platform. His eyes were still open, still frozen in the moment of his death. "You survived," the Arbiter said. Its voice was mechanical, but something in its tone suggested surprise, perhaps even shock. "No," replied, her voice echoed through the silent chamber. "I won." She stepped forward, climbing the stairs to the Arbiter's platform. No one tried to stop her. No one dared. "The Predator test is over," she announced. "Not just my test, all of them, forever." The Arbiter's many eyes blinked. "The test is a sacred tradition of the Conclave. It has existed for 10,000 years, interrupted. "I know, 10,000 years of murder, 10,000 years of watching helpless creatures die for your entertainment, 10,000 years of telling yourselves it was necessary, that it proved something about strength and worth." She turned to face the assembled species. Her eyes moved across the crowd, taking in the diversity of forms and faces. "How many of you lost someone to the Predator test?" she asked. Silence. Then slowly hands and tentacles and appendages began to rise. Dozens at first, then hundreds. Nearly half the chamber acknowledged the question. "Your scientists," continued, "your diplomats, your leaders, your children, all dead because the wanted sport and the Conclave wanted a show." She pointed at the heads scattered across the floor. "These were your apex predators, the greatest hunters in the galaxy. They had never lost, they had never been challenged. They believed they were invincible." She paused. "I killed all 6 of them in 6 days, alone, with no weapons except what I made from their own planet." The Arbiter floated forward. "This is unprecedented. No species has ever." "I know," said. "That is exactly my point. You designed this test to be impossible. You wanted to prove that they were the ultimate predators and that every other species was just prey waiting to be consumed. You never expected anyone to fight back." She walked to the edge of the platform and looked down at the crowd. "Humanity does not want your provisional membership. We do not need your approval. We do not want to be part of a conclave that built itself on the bones of the innocent." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. This was not how it was supposed to go. Successful candidates were supposed to be grateful, humble, eager to join the great community of the stars. They were not supposed to make demands. "What we want," continued, "is change, real change. The Predator test ends today, permanently. Every species currently waiting to take the test is granted full membership immediately. They will issue a public apology for 10,000 years of sanctioned murder, and the Conclave will establish new laws protecting developing species from exploitation." The Arbiter's voice was strained. "These are significant demands. The Conclave does not simply. The Conclave does whatever the dominant predator species tells it to do," said calmly. "You told me that yourself. They set the rules because they were the apex predators. They decided who lived and who died because no one could stop them." She smiled. It was not a friendly expression. It was the smile of a hunter who had cornered her prey. "I just established a new hierarchy." The chamber erupted in noise. 100 species talking at once, arguing, protesting, celebrating. Some demanded that be arrested for threatening the Conclave. Others cheered her name. The Arbiter raised its voice to be heard above the chaos. "You are one human. Your species is small, young, isolated. You do not have the power to make these demands." Waited for the noise to die down. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the chamber. "I was one human," she said, "on an unfamiliar planet, with no weapons, against 6 of your apex predators on their home world, and I hunted them to extinction in 6 days." She let that sink in. "Now imagine what happens when you make 8 billion of us angry." The silence that followed was profound. Every species in the chamber was calculating. They were thinking about their own worlds, their own defenses, their own ability to stop a species that could do what had done. "We are not violent by nature," continued. "We prefer peace. We prefer cooperation. We came to the stars looking for friends and allies, not enemies, but we are also survivors. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed us. We have hunted every predator on our home world to submission. We have remade our planet in our image." She looked directly at the Arbiter. "Do not make the mistake of thinking we are weak because we are kind. Do not make the mistake of thinking we are prey because we prefer not to fight. When humans are pushed to the edge, we become something that even we do not fully understand. Something ancient. Something dangerous." She gestured at the heads on the floor. "Ask the how dangerous we can be. Oh, wait, you cannot, because I killed every single one who came for me." The Arbiter was silent for a long moment. Its many eyes moved across the chamber, reading the mood of the assembled species. It saw fear. It saw hope. It saw the beginning of a new era. "The Conclave," it said finally, "recognizes humanity's position. The Predator test is hereby abolished. All pending candidates are granted full membership effective immediately. They will be required to issue formal apologies to all affected species, and new protective laws will be drafted within the next solar cycle." Nodded, she had won, not just the hunt but everything that came after. She turned and walked back down the aisle. The crowd parted for her even more widely than before. As she reached the door, she paused and looked back. "One more thing," she said. "My people have a saying, there is always a bigger fish. You spent 10,000 years believing you were the biggest." She pushed open the door and stepped into the light beyond. "Welcome to the food chain." 30 years later, the galaxy was a different place. Humans had built embassies on every major world. They had formed alliances with species that had once been scheduled for the Predator test. They had created new laws, new traditions, new ways of resolving conflicts without bloodshed. The still existed, but they were a shadow of what they had been. Their hunting traditions were outlawed. Their reputation was ruined. They were trying to find a new identity, a new purpose, a new way of existing in a galaxy that no longer feared them. And on Earth, in a quiet village surrounded by mountains, a retired lieutenant named Park tended her garden. She was 64 now, her hair gray, her movements slower than they had been. But her eyes were the same, still calm, still watchful, still carrying that strange stillness that had made the Conclave Arbiter uncomfortable so many years ago. Her grandson found her in the garden one afternoon, pulling weeds from between the tomato plants. He was 10 years old, full of questions, fascinated by the stories he had heard about his grandmother's past. "Grandmother," he said, "is it true you killed aliens with your bare hands?" Smiled and set down her gardening tools. "Not bare hands," she said. "I used their own planet against them, their own arrogance, their own assumptions." The boy sat down beside her. "Were you scared?" She considered the question carefully. "Fear is useful," she said. "It keeps you alert, it keeps you careful, but I did not let fear control me. I used it as a tool like everything else." "But they were bigger than you, stronger than you. There were 6 of them." "Yes," agreed. "They had every advantage, but they had one weakness that they did not know about." "What was that?" She reached out and touched his chest, right over his heart. They had never met a human before. They did not know what we carry inside us, the patience, the adaptability, the willingness to do whatever it takes to survive. She smiled. They thought they were predators. They did not realize that humans are the most dangerous predators in the universe. The boy thought about this for a while. "Will I be a predator too?" Laugh softly. "I hope you will never need to be. But if the time comes, if you are ever pushed to the edge, remember what I told you. Remember that you come from a species that survived everything the universe threw at us. Remember that inside you is the same strength that carried me through those 6 days." She picked up her gardening tools and returned to her work. Now help me with these weeds. Even predators have to take care of their gardens." The boy laughed and started pulling weeds. Above them, the sky was blue and clear. Somewhere in that sky, far beyond the clouds, ships carried humans to distant worlds. They were explorers, scientists, diplomats, traders. They were the future of a species that had proven itself to the galaxy. And it had all started with one woman who refused to be prey. Park looked up at the sky and smiled. She had done what needed to be done. She had changed the course of galactic history, and now, finally, she could rest. The hunt was over. Humanity had won.